What's going on, everyone? I'm Darkside Phil, and welcome to the Hateful Truth video game review series, where I give you maximum truth and minimum bullshit regarding the latest video game releases. And you might be saying to yourself, why is Phil sitting crooked in the shot? And the answer is, so there's room. So there's room for video footage, and I'm not seeping into it or anything like that. Now that I am going to be including video footage in all of my Hateful Truth reviews, I figure let's do it a little bit more professionally. This was actually some massive feedback that I got during the last one, so here goes. Today we're going to be reviewing a game that is highly controversial. It is still right now, even well, it's been a week now, a week after its release, still a hotbed of debate, still a hotbed of complaints, of rage. I haven't seen this much rage since about a year ago when everyone got to the end of Mass Effect 3, saw the ending, and said, fuck! And it's the big topic of controversy in the gaming community right now. This is a game that attempts to reboot an extremely popular series of games which has been, praised, lauded for almost a decade. And when it was announced that this series was going to be rebooted, there was a lot of skepticism and a lot of people saying, I don't know, I think maybe it's better to be more on the cynical side. And then when the demo was actually released a couple of months ago, a lot of people almost flipped out and said, this is not the game that we like, that we are a fan of, that we have grown up with, it's different. Unfortunately, this kind of thing happens when franchises do get rebooted. And when you take a game whose core was one thing and you change it up to be something else, undoubtedly you're going to get some controversy. We saw it last year with Resident Evil 6, and now incidentally the very same game publisher and game developer has decided to do it again with this game, which we are reviewing right now. It is DmC, or Devil May Cry. So, anyone who knows video games knows Devil May Cry has been a hack-and-slash masterpiece. There's been 4 installments in the official series so far, and it really surrounded itself around being a hack-and-slash game that when you learn it, when you actually get through the learning curve and you learn the advanced strategies, it could almost be like fluidity in motion. The crazy-ass combos, the multiple fighting styles and abilities and things that have been present in the previous Devil May Cry games leave a certain level of expectation. And so when Capcom announced that they were going to be rebooting Devil May Cry, that the main protagonist, Dante, was no longer going to have his signature white hair, but instead was going to be a brunette, that they were changing the storyline around, but it's kind of like if you have something that's really good and then you mess with it, people are going to complain. Take a look at George Lucas with the Star Wars movies. When he decided to put CGI into them, what happened and the massive backlash that he got. So, really, the source of the controversy, I don't really believe, is that they rebooted the series and that it changed. I think that the problem is that people are now deathly afraid that there will no longer be any of the more older style Devil May Cry games, that the original story is now dead, and that Capcom is now going to go with this new one, and the whole thing has changed. And I can tell you this, from a gamer standpoint, especially with games that I love, I can completely, 100% agree and understand with the people that are upset that the original Devil May Cry series may now have ended, and that this is going to replace it. Because this, I'll be honest, from what I can tell, does not play like the original Devil May Cries. So, that's fine, but as a person who's a reviewer, who's going to objectively talk about this game, I have to wipe that out of my mind and say I have to review the game for what it is, not what it should have been, okay? That being said, let's talk a little bit about the story without spoiling too much. The story focuses around Dante, who is a Nephilim, the offspring of an angel and a demon, so right away already a massive change to the Devil May Cry canon story. He is being chased by demons, and eventually gets contacted by a psychic named Kat, who says, listen, you're a Nephilim, and the Order, who is this undercover kind of almost terrorist organization, is actually a front for the human race trying to save the world from a group of demons that are controlling everything from behind the scenes. And it's kind of funny, because the plot takes a lot of themes and things out of modern day society, like the demons are using soda to turn you fat and stupid and lazy, and it's like, well, actually, yeah, look at the obesity rate in America today, and the fact that a lot of Americans, all they drink is soda, and that's probably almost a kind of a startling parallel to what's really going on. Another thing is there's a news channel in the game where they kind of spin all the news to be towards what the demons want you to hear, and they almost compare it to a channel like a political channel like CNN or Fox News. So there's a lot of parallels to actual things that are going on in the real world. And that's kind of neat that they do that. So I'm not going to give too much away. I will say that obviously Virgil's in the game, everyone knows that, and there's major plot changes, such as Mundus is no longer the devil, Mundus is now the head demon in the world, and yada yada yada. But the bottom line is, Dante's out on a mission to thwart Mundus and thwart the demons who are behind the scenes of everything. Okay? The plot itself is pretty good. If you really want to think about how clever it was that they related these things from real society, that's pretty good. Now let's talk about the gameplay, because I think this is really where the main focus of the controversy is surrounding this game. The gameplay of Devil May Cry is very similar to gameplay of a lot of other hack and slash fighters that have come out recently, except that it is a lot more complex. Dante has a sword that he uses, and he has a set of guns, ebony and ivory, they make a return, that he can use to make complex combos, a couple hits here and there. Maybe if you delay your button inputs, you get some extra hits. Then you can launch your enemy, you can do aerial juggles with both the guns and the sword, you get a whip that you can either pull the enemy towards you, or you can pull yourself towards the enemy for additional juggles and combos. Dante, also in this game, gets two special ability sides to him. He's got a devil side where he can use two weapons that he actually gains during the course of the game that are slower but heavier hitting weapons. At first there's an axe, and then later on he gets these gloves that are basically like magma rock fists, okay? And on the flip side, he has angel weapons, because he's half angel, half demon, where the angel weapons are not really heavy hitting, they don't deal a lot of damage, but they're more for crowd control. They have further reach when he actually uses them. And there's a scythe that he gets at the beginning of the game, and then there's actually these glaives that he gets later on. And the real thing that they want you to do with the game is they want you to fall in love with the combat, so that you're going to want to attempt to get the biggest combos possible without getting hit. So how do combos work? Basically, all of a sudden a bunch of enemies will come at you, and it's your goal to go between all of them, racking up hits and combos without getting hit by the enemies. Now the game has a dodge ability, where if you press one of the shoulder buttons, you do a roll out of the way. So what you may do is you start hitting a group of enemies, hitting the enemies, if someone's going to attack you from behind, you roll out of the way, then immediately start shooting them to keep the combo going, and that's what the game expects you to do. And the higher hits and the more variety of attacks that you use in a combo gives you a higher ranking for your combo based off of what they call style points. The ultimate goal of this game is not only to be successful in combat, but also to take your time as you go through the stages looking for optional things. There's some hidden souls that are trapped in walls that are moaning, and it's your goal to find all those and destroy them all. You get bonus ranking points for that. You also want to find hidden keys and hidden doors that actually open up secret missions, which are basically challenge rooms that have you do different things, such as kill all these enemies within a minute, juggle these enemies, and they only take damage when they're being juggled, and kill them within a minute and a half. Enemies only take damage when they're in a certain area of the challenge room, and so you have to try to do that within a certain time frame. It's stuff like that. And as you complete those challenges, you also get bonus ranking points. At the end of every single stage, they'll tally up your score. Based off of your score, it's going to give you a ranking, and the ranking actually gives you experience points that allow you to upgrade all of your different abilities, including just your way that you move, motion, jumping, the damage that your weapons deal, new abilities with your weapons, new combos with your weapons, and you also gain the experience from also killing enemies and also from finding hidden red orbs. So that's really the gist of the gameplay of Devil May Cry. It's very fast-paced, it's very fun, it's interesting especially if you're a completionist, you're the kind of person that really likes to go out of your way to look for hidden stuff. The game's a lot of fun. And the game itself has replayability because you actually cannot get all of the hidden items within just one playthrough. You actually have to play the game repeatedly because there are abilities that you get later on in the game that you need to use to actually open up hidden areas earlier in the game, and so you have to do a second or third playthrough in order to actually get all the secrets. So, all that being said, in addition to just the generic gameplay and the generic stages, there are also boss fights. And the boss fights are also pretty fun. They are large scale, multiple level. It's not just like one thing and the boss is dead. Maybe there's 3 or 4 stages to a lot of these boss fights. Challenging. I'd say yes, it's basically some of the boss fights can end up being puzzles, because you have to figure out what to do in order to actually damage the boss. It's not always as apparent as just, oh, there he is, go up and hit him. There is a little bit of complexity to the combat of the game when it comes to the variety of enemy types. I'd say early on in the game unfortunately doesn't have a lot of variety in enemies. There's like maybe a flying enemy and 1 or 2 generic ground enemies. But as you progress through the 20 missions that are present in the game, it does open itself up to a large variety of enemies. Of course, by the end of the game, what ends up happening is it's the same kind of enemy, only, oh no, it's a tougher version of that enemy, which a lot of these games do. It's just a palette swap or a name swap or whatever. But I have to say that where the combat really gets different from the free-flowing rack-up big combos kind of goal is when you're fighting some of these enemies that either don't allow you to hit them freely or they have super armor, meaning when you punch them, it doesn't stagger them at all. If they're swinging their arm at you and you try to hit them, the arm's still going to punch you, okay? So sometimes you have to use a lot more skill and thinking in your head when you're attacking, because you have to think, gee, if I hit him once or twice, then I have to dodge because that hit's going to be coming, or else I'm going to take big damage. There are also some enemy types that you just can't attack head-on. Maybe they have a shield, and so you need to use your whip to whip the shield away out of their hands first, and then attack them head-on. There are also other enemy types that only get damaged either by the demon weapons or the angel weapons, and so you have to figure out, gee, how do I distract the other enemies, or how do I maybe get away from the other enemies to fight this guy solo, or maybe I should kill all the other enemies first and then attack this guy. So there is some strategy involved in the combat of the game. Overall, as I've said, the game has 20 main missions. It has, I believe, more than a dozen secret missions, and in addition to all that, like I said, there's massive replayability. If you do want to go back on a harder difficulty, it actually unlocks apparently new enemy types, and also you get New Game Plus mode when you beat the game, and harder difficulties to replay it as, and of course you want to go back and get all that secret stuff that you couldn't get during your first playthrough because you didn't have all the abilities unlocked. Overall, the campaign of Devil May Cry with the first run-through is probably going to take you about 9.5 hours like it took me. I'm sure on harder difficulties and with more enemies and just better AI and more health, it's going to take a lot longer than that. But I have a couple main gripes with Devil May Cry that I want to address, okay? Number one, I told you about the story, and even though, yeah, it's a rehash of the Devil May Cry story, I was okay with the plot. What I wasn't okay with was the dialogue. A lot of the dialogue in this game is just so puerile. It sounds like a 5-year-old, alright, let me blow that up, maybe a 12-year-old wrote it. It's like, fuck this, fuck that, shit, dicks, cock, ass, anus. I'm not kidding you. Like, it's almost like the most immature person possible wrote it and thought, hey, well, you know, this is what all the kids do. All they do is they say fucking shit and ass, so we have to have a dialogue that's all full of that. And a lot of the times it's just not needed. There's a particular boss that you fight that you're like, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you, fuck you. And you're like, what the fuck? How can I take this boss fight seriously when this guy talks like a little kid, okay? Outside of that, I want to say that the combat, although it is fun, and although it is varied, and it is cool to use all the different weapons, can be annoying at times, because sometimes they'll pit you against a bunch of little enemies, and then 1 or 2 enemies that have that super armor mechanic. And it's so frustrating, because all you want to do is get into your groove where you're free-flowing with your combat, going from enemy to enemy, not, you know, dodging between the attacks and not getting hit, and rack up a high-rank combo, and as soon as a super armor enemy comes out, that's the end of that, because you can only do 1 or 2 hits, then you're going to have to dodge, then you have to kind of dodge everything else. It just brings the combat, the free-flowing and entertaining part of the combat, to a grinding halt when you end up fighting one of these enemies, and it's really annoying. But the startlingly big, largest problem with this game, which I could not fucking believe when I started playing it, there's no lock-on. That's right. You can never actively choose the enemy that you're attacking. And it's a huge problem because, again, the game expects you to have these large, free-flowing, varied combos to get higher rankings. But when you can't specifically target the guy that you want, it's extremely frustrating and it leads to cheap hits that cancel out your combo rankings. So you'll be fighting a bunch of dudes and there'll be 2 floating enemies with shields. Well, you need to just latch onto those shields and pull them down before you can hit those guys. But good luck purposely targeting them because there's no lock-on. So you may whip to the wrong guy, you may whip away, you may end up hitting the wrong guy with the wrong attack, and the guy that you wanted to actually hit will hit you in behind and cancel out your combo. Every Devil May Cry game up to this point has had lock-on. For Ninja Theory, who developed this game, to not fucking realize that you need lock-on means that they don't know what they're doing when it comes to a combat-style game. This is like, I'm not even talking as a fan of Devil May Cry, because I've only played one of the previous Devil May Cry games. Anyone in the fucking world who plays a hack and slash game knows there should be lock-on if the goal is to get a large combo without getting hit. I need to target a specific enemy so he doesn't hit me. The game doesn't let you. That is a massive game design flaw, okay? So, in summary, even though it's a reboot of the series, I'm going to review the game as if it wasn't called Devil May Cry. I think the plot's great, I think the actual combat and gameplay is fun, and I think that the graphic design, by the way, which I didn't mention, is actually very well done. The graphics. The music can be hit or miss, and the reason I say that, it's that kind of rock music that has the guy screaming, "Oh, Satan, I love Satan, here we go, let's worship Satan, yes, yes." And they just yell the whole time, and that really turns some people off. So if you don't like that, you're going to want to turn the music down when you're playing the game. But other people might like it, and at times I'll say the singing was annoying, but at other times the music fit the combat perfectly, and I did enjoy that. And so, fun combat, sometimes good music, great graphics and a good story, but you got to pair that with the fact that the script and the dialogue is horribly written and way too many just swears for the sake of swearing, and we think it's cool to swear, which it isn't, just to do it for the sake of doing it. Combat that at some point when you want it to be free-flowing isn't because of these super armor type enemies, and then just finally the ability not to fucking lock on, drag this game down massively. You can tell what they were going for. They were trying to modernize the Devil May Cry formula to make it easier for the more mainstream person to jump in, not instead of being a hardcore player and playing it over and over, just the mainstream guy to do it. Because there's no lock-on, I really feel they failed, okay? I'm not saying it's not a fun game. This is a great rental, and if you're a fan of the hack and slash genre and big combat, this is going to be fun, but understand there's going to be some frustrations, and the game could have been a lot better with just a few minor improvements. So overall, I give the Devil May Cry reboot a 7.5. It's better than the average hack and slash game, but there's a couple appalling flaws that they could have done better, okay? Alright, so that's it for the Hateful Truth video game review of Devil May Cry's reboot. I hope that you enjoyed it, you found it informative, you now know whether or not you'd actually like to try out with a reboot of the game. Again, I wholeheartedly understand why some people are so upset, but the good news is the actual original person who's in charge of Devil May Cry has said that the series is not necessarily over, that this just may be an experiment or a whole separate series. So for those of you who are hardcore fans of the old series, fingers crossed, maybe the original Devil May Cry will come back. In the meantime, what's come to replace it is okay, it's better than the average, but just because of some really just blatant omissions and stupid writing issues, I feel it comes up short from what it should be. So, alright, that's it. I'm DSP, and I'll see you next time for the Hateful Truth video game review series. Peace.